Time to make some picks against the spread for Week 6. Our numbers here coming from Caesars Sportsbook. Brad Crawford and Chris Hummer are back at it after going 7-3 last week. Nicely done, gentlemen. Let's start with the Red River rivalry. Not quite the matchup we were expecting at the start of the season. It's the first time since '98 that neither team is ranked. Womp womp. This line has moved in favor of Texas from 5.5 to 7. Could that mean, guys, that Quinn Ewers is making a return? Brad, could the $1 million mullet make Texas backers some money?
That would certainly help. But my question is, what is going on right now with Oklahoma's defense? Every time I flipped to that game against TCU last week, I saw Horned Frogs running all over the field. Brent Venables has to get that fixed. I'm not convinced the Sooners can tackle anybody right now, and I really like Texas in this spot. Give me the Longhorns covering in a game that's probably more competitive than it should be, being that it's a rivalry matchup. I like Texas.
I'm on the same wavelength with you, Brad. I think I would take Texas, whether Hudson Card or Quinn Ewers starts at quarterback. And I expect it to be Quinn. I think he's going to be back on the field this week. But Oklahoma is just a mess on defense right now. And beyond that, we have to track Dylan Gabriel's concussion. I don't know how likely he is to play this week, especially coming off the Tua Tagovailoa situation in the NFL. I'd be surprised if he's back out there. And Oklahoma probably has the worst quarterback depth of anybody in the Big 12. They could not afford to lose Dylan Gabriel, and he's out. I think Oklahoma is going to struggle to move the ball consistently like they would with DG calling the shots. And I think Texas is going to cover in this game pretty easily.
All right, let's take a look at the new heavyweights of the Big 12. Seriously, guys, I don't know what kind of alternate reality we're living in that has Kansas as the center of the college football universe this weekend, but hey, that's why this is the greatest sport out there. The Horned Frogs and Jayhawks, both undefeated, both ranked. A little line movement here toward TCU, now favored by a touchdown. Chris, who you taking here?
Yeah, this is the only matchup of unbeaten teams in college football this weekend. Heavyweights, Kansas and TCU. I really like TCU this week. I think this is going to be a high-scoring game. Both of these teams can put up points in bunches. But I think TCU is just more talented. This is the first time this year I think Kansas will actually be outmatched in that regard, which is a weird thing to say, but Kansas has gotten better overall. But I think TCU is the better team right now. And Max Duggan, who's having an outstanding season, has played his best football against Kansas throughout his career. He's 3-0, has been nearly perfect as a passer. I think that continues and TCU covers.
So I did not have this game marked as one of the college football's marquee matchups in October. I don't think anyone did. But Kansas is one of only 5 teams this season to cover in every game. TCU's also in that group, so something has to give here. But I don't know how you don't take the Jayhawks with the points at home. It's hard to believe Kansas, of all teams, will be bowl eligible with a win for the first time in 14 years. Give me the Jayhawks and a touchdown.
All right, another ranked matchup. Tennessee and LSU meeting for the first time since 2017. The Vols coming off the bye week as a short road favorite. And it's not a night game in Death Valley, but the Tigers are 5-0 in their last 5 home games. Still kind of weird to see them as an underdog in their own stadium, Brad. What do you think?
I agree with you. I would lean LSU here if this game was played under the lights, but I think the early kickoff benefits the Vols. Tennessee has lost 5 straight to LSU, has already broken one of these long SEC losing streaks this season earlier against Florida. I think the Vols do it again here. They get a touchdown late and win one of Week 6's best games in Baton Rouge.
Yeah, LSU's quietly been playing really well. I think people saw that Florida State game and were out on LSU immediately, but they've played really good football every week since. I think the problem here for LSU is it doesn't have the strengths to expose Tennessee's weaknesses. To beat Tennessee, you have to throw the ball and you have to keep up on the scoreboard. Jaden Daniels is a little banged up going into this week. That quarterback room is a bit in flux. But either way, I don't see LSU pushing the ball through the air the way you need to beat Tennessee. I think the bye week really helps the Vols, and I like Tennessee to cover on the road.
A showdown in the SEC West, Arkansas at Mississippi State. Now the line making some major movement to the state side in this one. The Bulldogs opened as 5.5-point favorites. Now that number is at 8. Chris, you think that's because a certain quarterback won't be seeing the field this weekend?
Yeah, I think I would describe KJ Jefferson as doubtful to play this weekend. I think we'll see a mix of Malik Hornsby and Cade Fortin at quarterback for Arkansas. I'm probably going to go the opposite way of Brad here. I actually really like Arkansas to cover. Maybe it's just because I can't quit the Razorbacks, a team I've been on all year. But the Bulldog defense isn't great against the run. And the one thing Arkansas does consistently right now is run the football. I think if Malik Hornsby's back there at quarterback, he is like a legit 4-3 guy in the 100. You can do some really creative things in the run game to keep this close enough. I like Mississippi State to win, but at that line, I do like Arkansas to cover.
You make a strong case, Chris, but I do disagree with you. And I think if KJ Jefferson does not suit up Saturday afternoon, the Razorbacks cannot win this game. Arkansas has failed to cover in its last 3 games after covering against Cincinnati and South Carolina to open, and you can make that 4 here. So Mississippi State is going to win another big game at home after beating A&M last week, and they cover to get inside the top 25.
A top 25 matchup in the Pac-12, maybe one of the best Pac-12 games we'll see all season. Utah and UCLA. The Utes have held the advantage recently, winning the last 5 games in this series. But we know UCLA is hot, upsetting Washington and still riding that 8-game win streak. Brad, who you taking here?
Yeah, Utah's rolling since that season opening loss to Florida, and this is where UCLA's unbeaten streak ends. This is the best defense the Bruins have faced all season up to this point. UCLA is one of 16 unbeaten teams still left in college football. Make that 15 after this week. Look, I projected the first playoff rankings for next month earlier this week. I have Utah as a top 16 going into that bracket. So I'm a firm believer in Utah still. Give me the Utes to cover in this game on the road.
I agree, Brad. I picked Utah to make the playoff, and I can't abandon ship now. They have to win this game. They have to win the Pac-12, and I think they'll do so on the road this week. Dorian Thompson-Robinson, UCLA's quarterback, is playing the best football of his career. He has never been this hot. He's struggled with interceptions throughout his career, but he's only thrown 1 this season. I think it's a different test altogether against Utah. UCLA is playing really well, and I think they put up points against an improved Utah defense. But I think the key here is Cameron Rising's going to have the best game of his season so far, and they're going to attack UCLA through the air. I like Utah to win and cover.
All right, the Deep South's oldest rivalry. Always a fun one, though maybe a little more lopsided than usual this year. Auburn at Georgia. The Dogs favored by 30. Now, guys, I'm always cautious about lines this big, especially seeing how we saw the Missouri-Georgia game play out. Chris, how you bet in this one?
Yeah, Grace, I agree with you. I have a tough time with this game, but I think Auburn does enough to cover. Auburn is not a bad football team. I know people want to abandon ship on Brian Harsin quickly, and there's a lot of heat on him, but they haven't played that poorly outside of the Penn State game in his tenure. I think Auburn does enough here to cover. Robbie Ashford's been pretty good. The only thing I'm hesitant about is Georgia's going to come out of this game angry. They did not play well against Missouri last week. Kirby Smart's going to have them coming out firing in all cylinders. But I do think Auburn does enough to cover. I don't know if it'll be enough for Brian Harsin long term, but it will certainly, in my opinion, be enough for Auburn to make people some money.
Yeah, let me start off by saying that I don't think this week's game against Auburn is going to worry a bunch of Georgia fans like the Missouri game did. But Robbie Ashford can make enough plays at quarterback for the Tigers to keep this one within that wide number. Just like Grace said, 30 points makes you think a little bit, especially in this rivalry atmosphere game between the hedges. So I won last week taking Auburn +9 against LSU, almost won outright. I'm going to do it again in what can be Brian Harsin's last game. Give me Auburn +30 at Georgia.
All right, hard to believe in week 6, but Ohio State going on its first road trip of the season to Spartan Stadium. The Buckeyes favored by 26, and they've seen big lines like this all season long, but OSU is 2-2-1 against the spread after a 39-point push against Rutgers last week. Brad, will the Buckeyes have jet lag in this first road trip?
Yeah, I don't think so. The Buckeyes have humiliated the Spartans in all 3 games during Ryan Day's tenure. Nothing from these 2 teams in September has shown me that's going to change. Look, Ohio State is rolling offensively right now despite a few injuries. That should continue in East Lansing against a Michigan State team that's really struggling right now on both sides of the ball. So I'll take Ohio State laying a big number to win by at least 4 touchdowns.
I agree with Brad here. Ohio State's actually 6-2 ATS in their last 8 games where they've been a 20-plus point favorite. Ohio State tends to cover in these situations. And Michigan State's terrible at defending against the pass. Nobody in college football is better through the air than Ohio State. And Michigan State's allowing opponents to complete 67% of their passes. They haven't turned the ball over this year via an interception. I think CJ Stroud's going to have a huge day, and Ohio State covers pretty comfortably.
Brutal. Just no hope for Spartans fans. All right, two teams trying to gain some respect here in the ACC. UNC at Miami. The Canes favored by 4 at home, but the Tar Heels have won 3 straight in this series. Chris, what's the play?
It should be Miami. Miami's coming off a bye. Miami has to win this game, but I just have a feeling North Carolina is a better team right now. It's going to have to be a shootout. Like, North Carolina does not have the defense to slow Miami down, and I think it should be a bounce back game for Tyler Van Dyke. But I just really like North Carolina in this game. I can't quite put my finger on why, but like with them laying that line, I like UNC to cover and to actually, frankly, win on the road.
See, the thing about Tyler Van Dyke in Miami this season is they've had several opportunities at bounce back games and really haven't shown up. So normally I would take the home team here in a game between what I consider 2 evenly matched teams. But Miami has widespread problems right now offensively. I don't want to lay points with the Hurricanes at home where, no one's going to show up. I'll take UNC plus the points here and the Tar Heels winning outright, as Chris suggested. Miami's spiral continues, and UNC, if they do go on the road and win this game, Tar Heels have to be the ACC Coastal Division frontrunner.
All right, Kentucky trying to stay alive in the SEC East Division race, hosting a South Carolina team that's still trying to find its footing. The Wildcats a 10.5-point favorite. And Brad, I know you're pretty familiar with the Gamecocks. These are your people. Can they cover this week?
Look, South Carolina has not won in Lexington since 2012. Kentucky is 7-1 over its last 8 games against the Gamecocks. That being said, this is a huge spot for the perception of South Carolina's program under second-year coach Shane Beamer. And on the other side, this is a game Kentucky can't afford to lose in the SEC race after falling in Oxford to Ole Miss. So I like Kentucky to cover here, 10.5 points, and win a low-scoring game. My lock of the week, I think the betting line is 49 points total. I would take the under there.
Yeah, I don't love fading Brad here. He's too humble to say it, but I think he's 3-1 this year ATS, picking South Carolina games. But I'm picking South Carolina to cover. Maybe that's because I've been a Spencer Rattler stan his entire career, and I just can't quit him. But I think South Carolina is going to do enough in this game to cover. Kentucky has a questionable offensive line. I think that will boost a South Carolina pass rush that struggled to finish possessions. They've gotten pressure, but haven't turned those into sacks. I think South Carolina is going to score enough as long as Spencer Rattler takes care of the ball to keep this close. I'm picking Kentucky to win, but I do think South Carolina does enough to cover.
Okay, I'll take Brad's points lock then, since you guys are split on that one. Let's wrap it up with the game that was circled on everyone's calendar. Seriously, we were all hyped about October 8th back in July. Texas A&M and Alabama, where Nick Saban and Jimbo can finally settle their offseason beef. Now that we're here, Bama's favored by 24 points. So, Chris, who gets the last word?
I think Alabama wins, but I like Texas A&M to cover here. We were actually in this exact same scenario last year where everybody thought A&M was going to get killed and they won that game. I don't expect that to be the case in 2022, but I do think Texas A&M has the defensive pieces to slow Alabama down enough, especially with Bryce Young questionable to play. If he can't play, I think Texas A&M keeps this close for at least a little while. Max Johnson's going to have a big game at quarterback, and Devin Achane's going to have to make some game-changing plays. But I think Texas A&M's too talented, and this game means too much to Texas A&M to get blown out to that degree. I do like the Aggies to cover, but Alabama to win.
I don't know, Chris. There's a lot of ifs in there, it sounds like, man. It's going to be tough for the Aggies here. Look, the beef has simmered between Jimbo and Nick Saban, but don't think for a second that last year's loss is not in the back of every Alabama player who's going to suit up Saturday night in that game. I'll go ahead and stamp this 41-10. Alabama wins, even with Bryce Young questionable. I don't think Texas A&M can execute, at an efficient rate against this defense, and questions at quarterback for A&M. So I like Alabama big for the second straight week. Laid the big number last week against Arkansas. Won that bet. I'll take Bama to cover here too.
Hey, I'm just saying, I'm not trying to pick sides here, but A&M was the favorite against Mississippi State last week, and we learned after Bryce Young left the game, Bama can win in multiple ways. Just saying. All right, thanks guys as always, and if you're watching this, stay locked on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel for your picks and college football news all season long.